And like anything in sports, sports has literally taught me the importance of discipline, the importance of hard work, the importance of mental toughness and physical toughness. And everything that I'm going to say to you today is nothing that you guys haven't already heard. It's nothing that's new, and there's no secret formulas, there's no remedies. It's literally repetition, routine, and dedication. Those three simple things. I know a lot of people, when they talk to you, they give you their story and they try to tell you how to do things, but I'm a realist, like I try to be as empathetic as I can, but I also try to be as truthful as I can as well. So I would never want to say something giving people the misleading truth that do all of these things and it's going to work. Me, as you'll hear later on, there were a lot of obstacles that almost made me quit. And so I had to, surround myself around with people that kept me grounded in my roots as to why I stepped onto this journey in the first place, what meant the most to me, and what I was willing to sacrifice, give up, and endure to actually make that a reality. And it teaches you more about who you are as people, because it's just like you learn a lot of things at physical, limits. So you go through a lot of things that test you physically, that push boundaries that you feel like you've never been able to get to before. But once you complete it, when you hear that, it seems less intimidating. It sounds less fearful, and you push harder, knowing that I did it this. So if they're asking for a little bit more, I know that all I have to do is just dig a little bit deeper. And you take that and you put it in your everyday life. When it comes to your schoolwork, it's mentally draining. When it comes to relationships and friends, it's just like that's emotionally draining. And you learn how to push through all of these things, because a lot of that takes a toll on you physically as well. So when you learn how to apply everything that you learn physically into every area of your life, then that's how you are one of the people that always remains at the top. My Olympic journey started basically back in 1996. I'm 31 years old now. So I, at the young age of 6 years old, was watching the Olympics when they were in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was a huge fan of track and field. I really love Michael Johnson. Any of you people that run track know anything about track? Michael Johnson was the 400-meter runner, the 200-meter runner, had the world records for years before Usain Bolt and that hard-nosed, like that fast boy from South Africa came out and just annihilated all of his records. I saw him running and beating people, and I really wanted to do that. And I remember sitting in my dad's lap saying, like, I want to be there someday, Dad. And he told me three things. He said, if you have faith and trust God, if you work hard and you make good decisions, he's like, you will literally be able to go anywhere. Because he's like, you trust God for the things that you can't do. He's like, you work hard for the things that you can. And he's like, you make good choices so that everything that happens after that is a succession of good things. Now, have I followed that perfectly? Absolutely not. But that's the blueprint that I live my life by. And so growing up as a kid, I had absolutely nothing. I grew up in a very small town in a small house with three sisters. And, my sisters were whizzes, good in sports, good in art, good in, like grades and school and stuff. And I was somebody that struggled in school, was bullied a lot, and had almost no friends. And, was somebody that didn't really see myself like going the academic route. I always wanted to be in sports because that's where naturally I could just be myself and I could do everything that I wanted. But naturally, there were people that came along that were always just like, well, you think we should do this, and you need to plan for your future better. You need to do things a different way. And so it always left me unsettled and not really sure. And I tried everything that you could, so I did go to college for a little bit, didn't finish because I was like, not really for me, wasn't really planning it, and I got back into sports full time. So around that time, I was running track and field in the Junior Olympics, AAU and USATF U20 leagues, and was really hoping to get a shot at the 2012 Olympics in London for the trials. And at an Junior Olympic championship meet the year before, I tore my knee. So patella tendon, MCL, and ACL, and one knee gone. The only thing that was holding my knee together was my meniscus tendon. It was nasty. And so when I tried making a comeback the following year, I was quick. I just wasn't as fast as I used to be. So I went from finishing in like the top three to like now finishing in like the bottom half of the race and like almost sometimes dead last. So I tried, didn't really know what to do at that point. I had put so much time and effort into getting better as a track athlete that when the news of like, oh, you're not going to be able to compete in track anymore, or just the reality of knowing that I wasn't fast as I used to be, really made me sink to a low spot. But I really wanted to be an Olympian. So I was like, well, if I'm not going to make it in track, let me see what other sports are available. So I clicked through at the time, this is 2012. I went through every single Team USA page and saw that bobsled and skeleton out of the Winter Olympics sports selections was the only sport that took tryouts. So I was like, well, it looks like it's going to be like this. So I filled out an application, got a call from my coach, and they said, hey, you got to come take a combine test. So the combine test, they test you in speed, agility, and strength. So you have to do sprints, you have to do weightlifting, you have to do a broad jump, shot toss, different things, kind of like the NFL minus the football drills. So that year, 2012, I was so nervous because it was real. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be trying out for a national team. And that year, they emailed me and said, we're so excited to see you. I made up an excuse and I chickened out and I didn't go that year. And for an entire year, that decision haunted me. And so when it came to 2013, August 28th, 2013, my life changed forever because that's the day that I drove up from New Jersey, where I live now, to Lake Placid, New York. I tried out, had the second highest score athletically in the entire nation. Then from there got invited to what's called a development school, where they teach you about the sport, they teach you about the sled that you're going to be using, they teach you how to walk a track, how to maneuver a track, what the turns are going to do, what they look like, how to adjust, all that kind of stuff. Then came the sliding part, and the sliding part was so much fun, and I was just having so much fun with it. So at the end of that 2-week school period, the development coach said there's only 2 spots available, for the elite development program, where we want to try and groom you for an Olympic team. And so we want to give you one of those spots. So I competed with Team USA for 3 years. I left, unfortunately, because I didn't really like the politics that were in there. Now, the US team, the way that their policy was structured and everything else was that if they wanted, so there's a lot of you young guys right here. So, for example, if I want, like Mr. Jeremy or Jason or Jared, and I want you guys to like succeed, then I have, then, like I rewrite the program, and then Jack and then Thomas and then Dylan, no matter how much experience or how many races they've won, they're automatically disqualified and they're not even brought into consideration. And so that was what I dealt with for 3 years. Now, I was still beating some of these guys. I was doing really well in training and meeting all the requirements, but I wasn't getting the opportunity. So I sat down with them one day, and I had said that I just kind of wanted to take my chances and compete for somebody else. Now, 3 years prior to that, my rookie season with Team USA, I was out racing in Salt Lake City, where the 2002 Winter Games were. And I just so happened to be at a birthday party, and I met some gentlemen from the notorious Jamaican bobsled team that everyone hears about all over the Winter Olympics and, the world nowadays. And so, me being half Jamaican, my father is an immigrant to America. He was born and raised in Jamaica. He came here and then got his citizenship. So I had dual citizenship through my father to be Jamaican. So I was like, I have dual citizenship. And they were just like, for 3 years, they were just like, oh, leave Team USA. They have too many people. You're not going to be able to compete. Just come over to us. And for 3 years, I just put it off. And I was like, I don't really know. I said, I'm going to stay here. I'd rather be an athlete, a good athlete in an elite program, than a mediocre athlete that can go anywhere and just get beat up. But after the 3rd year of going through the same drama, I just decided to part ways. But I parted ways very respectfully. And so competing with Team Jamaica was an adjustment for me, because I went from earning nothing and having nothing to now being able to go wherever I wanted. But the thing with Olympic sports is that we don't get paid. A lot of people look at us and they assume that because you see athletes like Michael Phelps, Simone Biles, Usain Bolt, that, like we all are on their payroll. And the truth is that we're not. Every Olympic athlete has to fund and support themselves. So that means in a season, I have to pay for all of my equipment. I have to pay for my coaches. I have to pay for my physicians. I have to pay for my meal plans. I have to pay for my travel, car rentals, room and board, flights, training, like race fees, my speed suits, brush bikes, helmet, like anything that makes my sport possible, I have to cover that. So within a year, a season, not a year, a season, it costs me $65,000 to almost $80,000 a season. And so having, like to now come up with all of that money on my own was very, very difficult. So there were times later on during the year, there were a lot of position changes in leadership. New coaches were brought in, old coaches were kicked out. The structure of it changed, and it opened up a lot more doors, but it also brought a lot of challenges to myself. So I had 2 coaches from England that came to our program. And then from the very get-go, they wanted nothing to do with me in the program. I was a skeleton athlete. They wanted everything to be about bobsled. And so since I wasn't a bobsledder anymore, they literally made it almost impossible for me to get anywhere. They cut me out of all the team conversations. They flew the team everywhere and never told me about it. They never funded me. My money had run out. Like I had money that was coming in very slowly from my family, who has been very supportive of me from start to finish when I started my Olympic career. And so when I was getting money, it was literally like maybe $50 in a week. And so it was literally coming down to daily decisions of, am I going to eat and feed myself today, or am I going to use this money to go and train? And a lot of times I would sacrifice meals and then go to training. And so it got to be very rough, and it was always I don't want to say depressing. It was discouraging, and it was very upsetting knowing that the people that were supposed to be giving me the best chance at the Olympics, because they didn't appreciate that I wasn't full Jamaican, I was American, that I somehow came from money and that I was entitled. But people didn't know that when I was raised, I grew up in a very poor neighborhood with no money. My family literally had nothing, and so just because you live in America, that doesn't mean that, like you're sitting at the top of the bread line. And the same thing, when you think of Jamaica, everyone thinks of the beaches, the resorts, but like further in, when I got to go visit where my dad grew up, he grew up in a 1-bedroom hut that 8 people had to share. And so he came from very humble beginnings. I came from very humble beginnings, but going through all of that, I was being treated differently based off of what appeared to be who I was, not really off of anything. And I was the only skeleton athlete that they had, the only person trying to get to the Olympics for them. And the fact that I was having to go through all of these things, it started to make me feel like it wasn't worth it, and that I was just doing this out of selfishness rather than out of reality and my realistic chances of trying to become an Olympian. So after that, I was traveling someplace and I was with somebody. My money had run out again. I was supposed to be in Europe in a week, didn't have the money to get there. I was staying in the US at the time. I was in Salt Lake City again racing. This was Olympic year. And so my federation had cut off all of my money. They had taken all of my equipment and stuff away from me. I had no access to any physio, medicine, or even a place to stay or to live. And so going through all of that, it literally made me so self-conscious that I was just like about to give up and quit. So I decided to stay in there a little bit longer, and at this point, like I had tried calling different family members that I knew might be able to help. And so at that point, I called an uncle of mine who was just like, you just need to quit, come home, get a job. You're not going to make it to the Olympics anyway. He's just like, it's too hard. Nobody wants to help you. So he's just like, just come home. And he's like, just go back to work. And I was like, not really what I wanted to hear. And then on top of that, the coach that I was paying a lot of money to was telling me that, oh, Anthony's, and in front of me, like he didn't know that I was there, but in front of me, to all the other athletes that I was racing against, it was 6 of us that were paying for him. And he's like, realistically, it's only this Swedish athlete and this Taiwanese athlete that I think have a realistic chance. And he's like, everybody else, he's like, I'm just getting paid, but he's like, they don't have a chance to go to the Olympics. And I'm like, this is my coach. This is somebody that I'm actually paying to make me a better athlete for the chance of getting to the Olympic Games. And this is what I'm hearing him say to my face around my competition. And so that made me like even more upset. And so the turning point came when everything was out. I had run out of money. I had absolutely nothing. I was supposed to go and stay with my teammates. I had messaged a teammate of mine secretly and said, hey, I have no money. I have no place to stay. I just need a place to crash for a day or two just so I can figure out a flight home to like settle and like reassess my situation before I go out to Europe to go and race to see if I qualify. He said, okay, we'll let you in. Just don't tell anybody, because like I said, at that point, the federation didn't want me a part of the team. They were doing everything to like get me out of the picture without getting me out of the picture. They make it so impossible that you quit on your own so that at the end they can be like, oh, well, he just quit, rather than them being like, look, we don't want you here. We don't do that. And then just cutting you, because then you can make it a bigger deal and then people can get in trouble. So that was the situation that I was in. I show up that morning of the next day and everybody's gone. During the night, one of my teammates, who I later found out at the Olympics, was snitching on me the entire time because she was jealous and wanted all the spotlight for herself. So she was putting all of these rumors out there that my federation was running with. And so they just left me there. And so my friends had European championships a couple days later. So they're like, we have flights that we got to catch in like an hour. So we got to go. Like, you got to figure it out, but like, let us know if you need anything. So I literally was stuck sleeping under a porch for 3 days in the heart of winter, negative 27 degrees in the middle of Utah. And that second night that I was there, I had literally given up all hope for everything. And so I had broken into the track. I climbed to the top of the ski jumps and was debating jumping off and ending everything. But me being dumb, I was like, you know what? I'm going to call my family in the last valiant like blaze of glory. I'm going to tell everybody I love them, and then I'm just going to like drift off and do my own thing. And so I remember talking to my dad, and my dad was very aware. So he was just like, I've been praying for you. And he's just like, I felt like something was wrong. What's going on? And then I was like, look, my phone's on 3%. And I told him as fast as I could, everything that I could, what happened. And then the last thing I heard him say, he's just like, don't worry, it'll all work out. And then my phone cut off. 2 days later, the answer finally came. It just showed up in a weird way. The police show up. They ransack all of my stuff because somebody was like, oh, someone's living under the porch. He's just chilling there, that kind of thing. Then when everything panned out, they were polite enough to, they had some choice words from my federation that left me there. But they were just like, look, we can't really do much, but all we can do is, if you want, we can take you to the airport until you figure things out. Because at that point, it had been about 6 days since I had eaten any food. I was severely dehydrated. I had lost so much weight in that time. And, they were kind enough. They bought me food, they bought me lunch, and then they dropped me off at the airport. And for a week, I slept in the lobby of an airport, like moving all my stuff inside, finding an outlet, trying not to get everything stolen when I was like waiting for everything else. And then I finally got a flight home. By the time I got home, I had lost so much weight, like I couldn't stomach anything. My body was literally in starvation mode, where it starts to eat itself, what doctors were telling me. And so like I would smell food and my stomach and my brain would be like, oh, we're full, just to get you through it. I'd eat like a grape or have like a bite of something, and I'd feel like so full that I couldn't like take anything else. That's what happens when your body switches to starvation mode. It literally saves and stores everything because it doesn't know when it's going to be fed again until you get back on a regular eating habit. Then trying to get back on a regular eating habit made me so sick. So after that, I spent 2 weeks at home around Christmas time, didn't see my family, didn't see anybody else, like I was just recovering. And then at the very end, this was Christmas Eve, 2017. And then I'm sitting there, and my family, for my Christmas present, they gave me a check for over $10,000. And they said, you haven't seen us for 2 weeks because we've all been working side jobs. We've all been doing overtime. We've all been doing this because we want you to go and qualify. So after that, I took my sled, took everything from there, flew to Switzerland, raced in Switzerland, and on the way back, ran into more problems. It's just like my clothes and my equipment got there, but my sled didn't. My sled showed up a couple days later, and then I was waiting for it for about a week and a half to actually get, because the last race that I was at back in Lake Placid, this was 2018, and so this was January 2018, was waiting for my sled to come because I had 3 days to get my sled, do my training runs, because in order for you to participate in a race, you have to participate in official training, meaning you have to have 2 successful runs from the top of the track to the bottom. You can't crash, you can't flip, you can't do anything. You have to make it down safely. Then you get to be in the race. So I was waiting for days. I kept showing up to the track, no sled, was just watching lines, trying to play it off like I wasn't panicking and worried. 3 days before the race, I called the airline, and they're just like, oh, well, the stuff is here. We just haven't had anyone to say it because the weather was just so bad. I borrowed a friend's car, and on bald tires in a blizzard, drove from Lake Placid to Albany, where they said my sled was. I got there, it was my suitcase with my clothes, but no sled. And so my sled was in Newark, New Jersey, which was 6 hours away, regular driving. It took me about 8.5 hours to get there through a blizzard. I call my parents, and I'm just like, they're like, hey, is everything okay? I was like, no, I said, I'm driving through a snowstorm right now because I said my sled didn't make it from Switzerland, so I have to go and get it. And then my mom tells me the story. She's like, when I told your dad that, he literally turned white and looked like he wanted to pass out. I mean, like my dad is the color of, like nighttime. So I laughed just imagining what he might have looked like, a little pale in that moment. But he was just like, what else does this boy have to go through for something right to just work out? So I get to Newark. I'm fighting with the lead lady from United Airlines. And I'm just like, look, 2 weeks ago, I flew here from Switzerland. My sled is here. Can I get it? She's like, I can't help you. So I was like, well, what do I get in return? She's like, we can give you a $25 voucher. I was like, let me tell you something. I said, I just drove over 10 hours from Lake Placid to Albany to find out that the bag that they said was here wasn't. I said, so I drove all night, and I said all day. And I said, it is now almost 2 a.m. And I said, I need my sled. And I said, I'm not a high school student. I'm not a college student. I said, I'm trying to qualify for the Olympics. And I said, if you guys and your incompetence is the reason why I don't qualify, I said, I'm going to sue whoever I can. And then that didn't do anything. But some guy was listening, and he's just like, what's your bags look like? And I said, well, I have this. It looks this shotgun case that I said keeps my runners in it. And I said, this long, big bag that has my sled in it. And I said, I need this. And then He went and went and looked for it and then found it and then brought it to me about 45 minutes, almost an hour later. So I tried to tip him and he was just like, it's not about the money, it's about the customer service. He's like, if you want to tip me, do me a favor and go qualify for the Olympics. I went back, I drove all night to Lake Placid, got there 20 minutes before the session opened, got to the top of the track, threw my sled together, had two of the worst runs, but I got them down. I got down the track safely. I went back to my room and I just died and I fell asleep for the day. That weekend, I had two of the best races of my life because I was racing for everything. I was racing against everybody that ever doubted me. I was racing against my coach that was taking my money, but wasn't putting anything inside of and putting anything into me to make me a better athlete. I was racing against every athlete that had, brutalized me, physically hurt me, that kind of thing. And were just like making my life miserable. And so after that, it was the worst 3 weeks of my life because after that race, we were just waiting. Everybody who was ranked in the top 60 of the world was automatically in the qualification, but certain countries can only send two, maximum three athletes. And so some countries didn't want to send them because even though they met the Olympic qualifications inside the actual country organization, they didn't miss it. They didn't make it. So I had a friend of mine from Austria who was ranked 30th in the world, automatically qualifies for Olympic qualification. But in the Austrian Federation, he had to place in the top 10 in 4 races, only placed top 10 in 3. And so his country was just like, we're not sending you. You didn't meet our criteria. Same thing happened to my friend for Switzerland for different reasons, from Germany for different reasons. And so it came down to what we called the bubble. And it was 5 athletes, my friend from Norway, my friend from Israel, my friend from Italy, my friend from Ireland, my friend from Luxembourg, and myself. 6 of us in the bubble, 4 more spots left, or 5 more spots left. So Israel got his. I was like, Norway got his, Italy got his, and then it came down to Luxembourg, myself, and Ireland. And so naturally, the last spot that was going to be given was going to go to Luxembourg, but he's 47 years old, and his country, I guess, didn't want to be embarrassed. So they mysteriously and magically forgot to sign his paperwork to make it possible for him to compete. And so the reason I got in was because at the time, that was when the Russians were going through that whole big doping scandal. And so the guy who won gold for them in 2014, during that 3-week period, the Olympic Committee was trying to figure out what to do about it. So in the last moment, they're like, you're banned for life. And so that had one more spot to the Russians. Now, the Russians had lots of caliber athletes, but because of the scandal, they were like, okay, well, we don't want to raise any red flags. So we're only going to send 2 athletes, which meant that one more spot was open and it was up to me and Luxembourg. And so in the end, Luxembourg didn't want to send my friend who was way older than me. And so the last spot available was up for grabs. They offered it to the Jamaicans. The Jamaicans naturally accepted it. I get a call January 29th at 5:30 in the morning saying like, hey, the IBSF and the Olympics have offered Jamaica the final spot for the Olympics, and we've accepted it. Congratulations, Anthony. You're going to the 2018 Winter Olympic Games. You did it. That kind of thing. And at that moment, every late night, all those nights where I cried myself to sleep in every airport, like underneath that porch where things didn't make sense and I kind of felt like things were pointless, like all didn't matter anymore. Not that it was worth it, because would I go through that again if I had the choice? Absolutely not. But in that moment, I didn't feel anything except just happiness.